Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversants are Stephanie Davies-Arai and Denise Caignon, who were recorded in person at the GenSpect Bigger Picture Conference that was held in the first weekend of November of the year 2023 in or outside the city of Denver. And that conference showcased, 20 or 40 different speakers and 200 or 300 individuals coming together to discuss their problems with children being medicalized for the sake of a transgender identity. And Stephanie and Denise were the first, or among the first two, to speak out about this back in 2015. You can find Denise's work at fourthwavenow.com and Stephanie's work at transgendertrend.com. And those two websites should be treated as historical documents for this growing movement. Without further ado, here is Stephanie and Denise. How many years since you guys started your two projects?
It was 2015. I found nothing. The reason I started the site was because there was nothing. I found one desperate parent commenting on some blog. And then I found she had written a post on her Communicating with Kids website. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I wrote to her. I was just like, oh my God, I found someone. And so
it's just funny because my Communicating with Kids blog, it was a weekly blog for parents.
Yeah.
It had a very small subscription. I used to put these blogs on Mumsnet, Brit Mums and other parenting websites, but they didn't have a lot of traction. And this mad woman from the USA contacted me.
It was like it was just incredible. It was like being out at sea drowning or something. And I find this island with this sane human being on it.
And you interviewed me.
I did.
You interviewed me.
For Fourth Wave Now.
And so I appeared on your
And then
blog.
Maybe some people don't know this, but we had the idea of doing Transgender Trend together. And we talked about it.
Well, I'd already planned to do a website and set up something.
Right, but remember we were going to have a Canadian leader.
When we got together, you put me onto that email list you got of parents.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a group of parents from the US and Canada. I don't think there were any from the UK. But you got me onto the email group because they were parents who'd contacted Fourth Wave Now.
Yeah.
So we communicated, and that was my real, because I got a lot of response from that first blog post from parents, so I had some experience, but really it was those parents that really made me understand the agony of parents.
Right.
And so I was already getting research together to put on, and thinking, already, this is the only thing I wrote. I think I wrote 3 blogs altogether for Communicating with Kids on this subject, and 2 that were kind of about this subject. And it was the only thing I wanted to write about because nobody else was writing about it. So I was thinking of doing a website which would be a resource and be a repository of all the research that we had for parents.
About early onset, when this hadn't even been named, but just trans identity, specifically in girls and boys.
Especially in this rapid thing. Yes.
And you said, well, let's do it together or we'll make it an international site.
And so we started to, and I did a post on Fourth Wave Now announcing it. Remember?
No,
we announced it. And we were going to get a Canadian leader, and I guess I don't want to talk about what happened with that.
No, because
there was a problem, and I don't really want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But we had this idea, which is kind of so GenSpect is doing what we decided we couldn't do. Because
we were right.
We were right. Well, the whole deal was medicine is so different, law is so different. How in the hell can we focus internationally on all this stuff? Right?
But not just that, the timing. There's no way we could have done that in 2015.
You think not?
No, because there weren't the people the professionals, the researchers, the clinicians who were talking about it, and we would never have got a board or trustees
but you would
or anything.
at that point in time, you'd already seen the scope of a project like this. And could you just define?
We were envisioning it.
Yeah,
could you sum up like what the project would be like, or the aim or the intention of what you?
I think it's what GenSpect is doing.
Yeah,
it's what GenSpect has managed to pull off. Don't you think?
Yeah, a global organisation that would. Yeah, I mean, GenSpect are casting themselves as the alternative to WPATH.
We weren't thinking
in those terms. Just a global organisation. But what happened, and that's also where the name Transgender Trend came from, because the parents, we were talking about, and I had been looking at names, and I was thinking of, things like Let Kids Be Kids, and things like that. And of course they were all taken. And then I put it to the parents in the email group, what the name should be. And they said, well, when we search on Google for information, we put in the search term transgender trend to find alternative information. So we went with that.
So even though we decided not to form an organization together, we've been in very close touch all these years.
Yeah.
And, seeing you for the first time, so exciting. But then after about 2 minutes, it was like, yeah, right. We already know each other.
Yeah. So it's exciting but a bit boring.
It's not boring.
But it just feels like, we've had so many FaceTimes over the years, and Denise has been such a support to me when I've had shit. You've been at the end of a phone for me. Times when... do you remember the time when my mum had a stroke?
Absolutely.
And I was staying at my
I'm a speech
house
pathologist.
And going to the hospital every day. It was awful.
It was
time.
awful.
And you helped me there because you knew about people who had strokes.
Yeah,
so you supported me, not just in the work.
We've been friends for all this time.
Life events.
It's a funny time in history, where with all the problems with the internet and in-person communication, it still facilitates, right?
You're so familiar to me.
Yeah.
You're so familiar. Honestly, it is. We've been we sort of... When we met, it was like we were just picking up after having not seen each other for a week. Yeah.
But great.
And we're going to have 3 days holiday together.
Yeah, we're going to Boulder. We're going to hike.
Yeah,
hang out. And we've been planning that for years too. Thelma and Louise, right?
That was the
thing.
So back in 2015, 2016, when you had an intuition of what was needed, but you pared down to what, like a web portal for information or for resources?
Well, we kind of went.
Denise was already doing.
I was doing Fourth Wave Now. She did transit. We just went on our separate ways while still being very closely in touch.
And so, what were you guys providing that would then grow into the movement now? Like, what were the... So
I think quite different things. Like you were doing things that were very much about the US. I mean, not everything. You did stuff about mermaids,
yeah.
But you were finding stuff like Diane Ehrensaft and all the really dark side of what was going on in
So you were documenting, was it specifically youth gender medicine?
Yeah, so it started as, and I've said this to you before, there was nothing. My first thing was there's got to be somebody out there who is also saying, this doesn't make sense. So that was the initial thing, right? So if you build it, they will come. Other parents came. They're my best friends now in real life. But it pretty quickly morphed into an investigative outlet, really, because I started digging. It's just who I am. And as I started digging, I found all this stuff that, they're sterilizing kids. All this stuff is happening. So it kind of turned into, and then, the parent support angle kind of that baton sort of got passed. Maybe not so much because you maintained that longer, I think, as more the parent support thing. It's not...
What?
Well, so I guess what I'm thinking is it wasn't that long after that PROGD Kids formed.
Yes.
Then there was that big online forum that was run by the guy Gender Critical Dad.
Yes,
remember that?
Of course. Yeah.
So a lot of people started to come and do that parent support. So I sort of felt like that was more taken care of. I don't know about your side.
I don't know. I spent the first at least a couple of years on the phone to distraught parents. Really, a lot of my work was emailing and having calls with parents in those early years. And then in the UK, we got the groups Our Duty, which is now spread, and Bayswater Support, two really good parent groups in the UK, which has taken a lot off me because it's much better for them to be in a group with other parents. But the value of me at that time was that, here was somebody that understood and didn't think they were crazy or bigoted.
Right.
And
that was both
they
of
were
us.
so much on their own. So that, but the transgender trend hit the ground running because 2015 was the year of the Women and Equality Select Committee in the UK did their trans equality inquiry, and the results of that were published at the same time. The Memorandum of Understanding on Conversion Therapy, which was the professional practice guide for therapists and counsellors, they were planning to add gender identity to it. So that was start of 2016. And then 2017, it was the Equality and Human Rights Commission publishing schools guidance, supposedly. So I got myself as a stakeholder in that. So it was immediately the very political stuff.
Very, very.
Plus the amount of stuff for kids on TV, on BBC, ITV, radio, TV. It was just so much to analyse and comment on, and lots of conferences going on. And I wrote the schools guidance because that's what all parents said. What we need is alternative schools guidance. So that became a priority to do that. So it's like it started and it was immediately full time.
Yeah. And it was almost a one-woman show for quite a while over there.
It hasn't really let up since.
I don't know if people appreciate her enough. Honestly, this woman is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, she affected government policy. I mean, so many things, Yeah.
So there were these gender-critical feminists in the UK, I know, that got pretty active at a certain point. But you're working... It's just the landscape on the gender battle, I guess. You have the transgenderists, and then you have the gender-critical position or kind of coalition, but that's built up of all these other people. And where were you two in the political milieu? Were you just, they would come by and use your stuff to facilitate their needs? And then also, how did the trans rights activists deal with you guys, and what were some of the ways that you had to develop tolerance or PR or?
God, it's a big question. The trans activists tried to we printed our schools guidance online as an online resource to begin with, and then crowdfunded to get it printed. They shut the crowdfunder down. When we first published the schools guidance, which was February 2018, there were calls from all the trans activist groups: ban it, burn it, shred it. There were Stonewall wrote a statement on their website, which is still on the website, saying that it was dangerous for children or something, and in breach of the Equality Act. So there's a lot of opposition. The crowdfunder UK, I think we used for the crowdfunding, that was closed down for 6 days while they investigated to see if the school's guidance contained any hate, and they couldn't find any. They got their lawyers to look at everything, and then it said, no, you can go ahead with it. We couldn't find any.
And were you guys, were your websites shut down or any?
No, not I.
Kicked off Twitter or anything?
I was kicked off Twitter once. Yeah. The website survived. It's interesting. You may remember the Gender Trender website. She was a much more firebrand kind of person, and WordPress kicked her off.
And what was the other one?
Was it The Wolf?
No, it was.
I don't know.
Oh, I can't remember what they were called.
I mean, so situation was different in as much as I had, as you know, because you interviewed her twice, a daughter. That's how it started, right? And so for a long period, I was doing this kind of, investigative stuff. I mean, I guess I'll say two things. It started to get a lot of attention, and I talked to a lot of journalists, a few, like Bernard Lane, who's so amazing. He interviewed me and he interviewed my daughter right away. He got a story into the Australian, actually. But there was a lot of media suppression. There were a lot of near misses, right? So a San Francisco TV station became very interested in a story the Curtis Crane story. Curtis Crane, the gender surgeon who had a whole bunch of lawsuits. And we wrote a 3-part series on that. And an outlet there got very interested. And there was even, not with me, but there was a studio interview with a mom, and it fell apart. Like, this is what we saw over and over again. There'd be all this media attention, and then it'd be like ghosting. And sort of the biggest example of this is the Big Atlantic story that got Jesse Singal into hot water. He interviewed me for 3 hours. We had a 3-hour in-person interview. The interview was going to be in the article. The night before, the fact checkers wrote to me and said, okay, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? Okay, it's going to run tomorrow, whatever. Boom. Somebody, higher up axed it. And not only did they axe that interview, they axed any mention of Fourth Wave Now. And a couple of the moms who I had actually referred to him had referred to Fourth Wave Now and said this was really important to them, and so on and so forth. Even that was cut out, right? So there was this deliberate suppression. That would have been 2018, I believe. So there was a lot of frustration along the way that I was uncovering stuff. I want to say we, because I had helpers who, have to stay anonymous. They still do. It was frustrating, because we knew we were doing important work. But, we know what the media atmosphere has been. And it's better now. It's much better. But it's still, it's still an issue. And then so the other thing that happened is when my daughter kind of came out, she desisted. And then she was motivated to form her own group, which was short-lived but had a big impact. So that's kind of the path that it took on this side.
It's funny, the media thing, because one of my reasons for setting up as an organisation was to get into the media.
And you did.
Because I knew that they wouldn't be contacting me for comment.
Janice. What's her name at the Times?
Janice Turner.
Yeah.
Oh, she started writing stuff. Brilliant. She did a fantastic...
She had a great in with the media at the Times.
Well, I didn't.
Yeah?
I didn't at the start. No, I didn't. I just wrote. I sent a press release and got myself known. So I was quoted. They did ask. It did work. They did ask me for comments. So I was quoted in articles about kids transitioning as a voice of caution. It did work, but I was also on Newsnight. This was 2016. BBC's flagship current affairs programme, Newsnight, debating with Susie Green of Mermaids. And I like to think that debate was what led to #NoDebate, because Susie Green was saying basically... what percentage did she give? Only it was 4% or something of children that came to Mermaid desisted. And I was saying, well, the general figure is 80%. And so I was giving sort of the correct figures, and and Susie Green was doing the usual, and I thought it was really interesting that, hey, parents, if you send your kids to Mermaids, they won't desist, So, but yes, can you imagine at that time? But then they stopped any time that I was asked to go on to any programme. Well, not any time, but there were a few times that I was asked to go on to debate with somebody from the other side, and then it would be cancelled because they refused to appear with me. because I'm a transphobic bigot. So that became a strategy in the UK.
But the UK media, there's a lot of the same problems there as here. But I do feel that here, now things are kind of bursting open, it wasn't as repressive as it was here. The repression to talk about anything other than affirmation only has been so severe. It's people like you, Benjamin, who gave a voice to people who would never otherwise have a voice. He's done these interviews all these years, and it's been so important.
Yeah. You were one of the first sort of alternative media platforms for people to be able to use who wouldn't get a platform on mainstream media.
And I want to ask you a quick question.
Let's turn it round.
Well, just what compelled you to do that? I mean, you'd done your evergreen work, which was amazing, but what drew the interest to all of us?
Well, once I started to look I was attracted to the activist side because I saw that illiberal activist, we're the victims and we have all the power and we're going to shut down speech at Wilfrid Laurier University with the Lindsay Shepherd affair in 2017. And once I started to report on that, I was connected or contacted by transsexuals who said that I don't want to have anything to do with this free speech or controlling other people's speech or any of this totalitarian bullshit.
Interesting.
I just want to live my life because I have a problem. And then somehow there was one radical protester, I believe, at an event with that involved Stella, I think, an early event where the trans rights activists kind of barged into an event and some mild violence happened. Not personal.
Bristol.
Violence, and then this trans person felt really regretful that they acted that way and wrote an article, I think in the Daily Mail or something like that. I reached out and started to talk to them and started to ask the questions like, well, why would you transition? What does that mean? And then I started listening to these stories, and then you have all these just people with all these different vested interests, and it's all very personal, especially with the parents and the detransition. Once I find the detransitioners, then you have just this modern Bildungsroman, this modern just coming of age story that's completely inverted.
And I think you were the only place that was giving a platform to the detrans, at that time.
Yeah.
Well, you just turn on the mic and I think I was probably the only one that just let them speak without any editing. Just who are you? What are you going through? And for some reason, I stumbled upon the Peak Resilience Project and those four girls.
Well, had we already? No, we hadn't done an interview. Yeah.
No, that wasn't for a while, but we were in contact. So, but the story just kind of started telling itself, especially as an interviewer. It was just, I really learned how to interview. Because then I had to do sexologists, scientists.
Yeah, to do all of those.
Then you have to how do I think this way? How do I think that way?
Range.
From scientific thinking to personal thinking.
Yeah.
And really try to grow as an interviewer. But then you start making all these connections, which leads to more connections.
Yeah.
And then I find myself making an ethnography of gender. And so that's kind of why I want to have you two in a room, because you guys were there before me, but we both saw this thing take on shape, and now it's in a different space.
And I mean,
your work is like a historical document.
It is. It is.
Really documents.
Yes.
Because I think when you started, there weren't that many. It's like when I look at, and I haven't taken anything down off the website, but I started at one page of the website called, very ambitiously, Professional Speaking Out. And it was really, what I found to put on that page was really scraping the barrel. I think a lot of stuff, could find hardly anything. And I think the first time I got really excited about a professional speaking out was Lisa Marciano. She was very early on writing things. So grateful. Anybody who wrote anything was, and then Margaret McCartney in the UK wrote a piece for the British Medical Journal, and that was, when I read that back, it was a really sort of carefully written, measured piece. But it was at the time so exciting and groundbreaking, because it was the first.
So,
but you look at that page now, and it really is a historical document. From there was Alice Drager, Deborah So. There were people like that.
Yes. Well, and so there's two things that you're kind of stimulating me around. What else it was is that a lot of people did sort of their little debut thing on Fourth Wave Now. So I interviewed Sacha Hayat. And Bailey and Blanchard did a piece on it. And then a bunch of detransitioners wrote stories for me. So it kind of turned into a zine,
But what you did was you analysed, and that was your great skill. And I think that was really important, that the analysis of what was going on, razor sharp.
Well, and it
brilliantly written.
It was. Thank you so much. It was an outlet too for my own upset. Before my daughter desisted, it was somewhere to put all that energy, rather than worrying constantly about her or trying to engage with her about it before she desisted. It was like I could just throw myself into that.
And what was your topic? You were looking at the medical industry? Is that kind of like...
Looking at the medical industry, I started looking into the prior studies, many of which said, hey, most of these kids desist and end up being gay. Not all of them, right? And then seeing how it changed, and seeing how, Johanna Olsen-Kennedy and Aaron Saft and all the people we know were pulling it in this direction that was so extreme. And this is when it started to really build right around 2015. I mean, it got much worse at that point.
It's a key year.
But the parent part, I don't want to neglect the parent part. And one of the things that's been very touching to me here at GenSpect is many, many, many people have come up to me and said, they say almost the exact same thing. They said, you were the only thing I found. I was desperate and you were the only thing I found. And for many years, it's still true. Up until a couple of years ago, like a bunch of them say, 2015, 2016. But some of them are saying 2021, that it's still hard to find something. And, I feel grateful that they told me that, and it's an important impact because they didn't just say that, they also said, and it gave me the courage or the strength to fill in the blank, form my own parent group, or go forward and do this or do that, and they said even if my kid didn't desist, and a lot of them have not, a lot of them have medicalized, just to feel like they weren't alone and to just feel a courage.
They weren't wrong to feel the way they did.
That's right. And you got that too.
Yeah. What people say to me is that they knew something was wrong. They felt really uncomfortable about it. And reading my stuff was like, they made them understand why it was wrong and articulated it for them. So then they knew how to put it when they were arguing it, or they understood it better. So that's what people say.
Was there kind of like a period of time where it really started to take off, where things started to really have a sea change?
In which direction?
Well, I guess in the direction. Well, I guess we have to describe what the direction is now that you see here, like at this event at the GenSpect conference in Killarney, with SAGM forming, with GETA forming, with all these Nashant, or like they're beyond Nashant. They're now like kind of.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing and a wonderful, wonderful thing. I mean, I don't even know all the names. Like, if somebody asked me, I could name all the organizations, including there's a bunch of parent organizations, and then there's all these other ones, medical, therapist organizations. I mean, right?
Another thing, we have a useful links page on the website, which had about 4 things on it. Sort of Fourth Wave Now, Women's Place UK,
Fair Play for Women. And now,
that was about it. And now I have to do it in different sections, and there are groups of professionals, therapists, doctors. There's parent groups. There's groups that are concerned with schools and education, feminist groups, detransitioner groups. There's a group to suit everyone. There's groups for autism. There's everything out there now, and I've watched it and added to that page over the years, and it's been absolutely fantastic to see, because we need everybody, and we need all of the you know, there's a bit of disagreement amongst the feminist groups.
Oh, really?
There is a little bit of yes, and I just
you don't
I just
say.
think I just love all of. I just think I am so great, and I've always remained so incredibly grateful to anybody else setting up an organisation, because I did feel really alone. I did feel, I mean, even though I knew there were people, various groups that supported me, particularly lesbians in the early days, but still, the sort of responsibility I felt was massive, and I couldn't deal with it all. There was far too much.
Why did you feel so responsible?
She was it.
I was the only organisation that was speaking about it. So, and there was too much. There was, even though my area was it was children, but it was children in the areas of health and education, both. You know, so in the clinics, in the schools, and the sort of legal position as well. So I really had to learn all my legal stuff.
And I think something we share is that it's not that we don't have disagreements with others, you know, but I think we are both people who don't resent, you know, other groups, or, you know, it's like, great, the more the merrier, right? Which I think is part of the longevity of what we've both been doing.
And the different personalities.
Yeah.
And some, you know, the more people stand up and speak, actually, I'm not a natural, you know, sort of taking the stage sort of person, actually. I'm quite introverted. So that side of it, and I've done so much of that. But I, you know, I'd rather sit alone and write and think and hide away. So that's been hard for me. So, you know, when I see people like Helen Joyce, who's sort of born to do it, go you know, this is fantastic.
But you've been great at it.
People like Kelly J. Keane, you know, I think, yes,
you know, but you're
people who want to do it.
But you're not a firebrand. You are a kind of a voice of reason.
Yes,
and that's important.
I know. But I think every voice is important. I think
every voice is important.
I like the measured, reasonable voices, and I like the angry voices.
There's room for everyone.
Yes.
And see, I couldn't really speak out because I was really protecting my daughter for a while. So, you know.
Yeah, so you can.
I have ambivalent feelings about doing
anonymous.
it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not somebody who wants to go out and do a big speaking circuit. You know, I'm okay with it, but I don't know. I'm kind of in between, I think. I'm edgier than you.
Of the camera
I'm edgier than you.
You know, despite saying I don't naturally.
You've been in front of the camera so much.
I know.
What's been the?
Perhaps I do like it, really.
I think you kind of do.
Well, you know, I think I've got more comfortable.
You're good at it. You're good at it.
Yeah.
What's been the anchor, whether it be an attitude or a methodology through all the work? Like, just keeping you grounded, keeping you steady, keeping you developing in this?
Or kind of what's the motive, what's the driving force?
Yeah,
or something?
And also not just the driving force, but also if insofar as you have been overwhelmed or loss of hope, you know, feeling like this is never going to change, like what was it that in your character or in your life that kept you going?
I mean, Defiance.
What have we said? Persistent, consistent, and insistent. I'm kind of a, you know, obsessive type, you know, and it's interesting because I don't know how it's felt for you, but for me, there's all this tragedy around it too, and you know, so many families wrecked and all the things that have happened. But on another level, it's intellectually incredibly interesting. It's medicine, it's law, it's any aspect, it's the government, you know, and for me, you know, I'll go down this rabbit hole and I'll be like, oh my God, and I'll be discovering and talking about things that no one else has, you know, like having our informants, you know, in the gender conferences and stuff like that.
And the Facebook groups too.
Yeah, it's been amazing because that's how we got it. You know, and I'll just say, and of course I can't reveal exactly what, but some of the stuff we uncovered has ended up in depositions in certain court cases and stuff like that. You know, that's really gratifying, you know, that maybe move things along a little bit. You know, we haven't had the blockbuster case yet. What do we have? Like, I think there's 9 active suits now.
Yeah.
Not the big public suit that's going to blow a hole in the whole thing, but, you know, that's encouraging to see too. So
I'm also an all or nothing person. You know, if I get interested in something, it's 100%.
yeah,
That's it. And so, but
we share that.
But what? Yeah, but what? An obsessive, and it is incredibly. It sort of touches every level of life, doesn't it?
It's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's very.
Like name anything it doesn't touch.
So many levels to it.
Yeah.
But when it gets overwhelming, I mean, it does. It's devastating. You know, the work with parents is. And I have to take a step back.
Yeah, see, I'm not sure I could have.
I have to make myself take a step back to be objective about it. And what I always, and I've said this before, I always think is, because I think I've got to stop doing this because it's awful. It's awful. I can't bear it. And then I think if I know about this stuff, I couldn't ever have hidden from it, not known about it. And if I wasn't doing anything about it, I would feel worse. And then I pick myself up and carry on. And it's basically safeguarding children. That is my driving force.
Always has been, yeah.
Society generally has completely forgotten how to safeguard children and how to be the adult to the child. And it's that, I think that's what I think has gone so wrong, and we're seeing the effects of it. So defense of children, really.
Yeah, I think for me, more recently, the whole involvement of the federal government in this and all that stuff, it's sort of, I was kind of pulling back almost to the point of thinking that the baton's been passed, I don't need to do anything. And then this whole thing that happened with Rachel Levine and the federal, all of that and all that guidance that came out last year, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to talk about this. You know, I mean, it's almost unbelievable what's happened. You know, and there's been
we knew because there were various stages where I felt it turned in 2017, the end of I remember writing a piece. A review of the year. An awful lot happened in the UK in 2017. The media started talking.
You've had more progress in the direction we're trying to go.
Yeah, but we
well
turned a
ahead
corner.
Of us.
I remember writing about it. I felt this was the start of the end. You know, so and then various things have happened since where it's been a big sort of watershed moment. The Kira Bell case was a big one.
Yeah,
in that, and then the Cass review, you know, and the Cass's interim report, the closing of the Tavistock. We've had big moments. So, but I knew at that time that as we started winning, that the resistance would be so much stronger, and it has been. So there's still so much to do because it's still like a game of whack-a-mole. You think you think you've got somewhere. Yeah. So, you know, brilliant. Hilary Cass is fantastic interim report. Written guidelines for the new clinics, but all the old Tavistock ideologues are coming into those clinics. The rest of NHS England seems to be working to undermine Cass. So it's not over yet. There's still
and I think
lots
it's still
of work
a question
to do.
Mark here. I mean, I think, quote unquote, there's been progress. I mean, it's so much different than 9 years ago, but I think there's still a lot of uncertainty how this all going to play out in the U.S. We're much a bigger country. We've got the states do their own thing to a certain extent. You know, it's
been much easier in the UK.
Yes.
This little island.
And I think I told you I'd get frustrated. I'd go, I'm celebrating everything that's happening in your country, and I'm so envious, you know. You can have meetings like everybody can go down to London.
I know.
You know, like, you can't do that here.
People even come from Scotland.
Right? Even from Scotland.
Or we go up there. It's not that difficult. No.
Being immersed in this, such a complex, multifaceted topic for so long, have you been tempted to kind of make an overarching, like, why is this happening? And because you see people like try to throw out theories like big money or dark forces, or like try to do some sort of, try to make sense of it in a big way. Are you tempted to do that? Have you found like something that's repeatedly been the case? Like this is the manifestation of some sort of cultural decline, or the will of a nefarious,
It's all, to me, it's all of the above. I like a singular
confluence of all these.
It's a confluence, right, of many things. It's the T latching onto the successes of the LGB, right? It's identity politics. It's, is there a singular cause? No, I don't think.
There were so many factors together. But I wrote, so this was in 2017, the first book, Heather Brunskill-Evans and Michelle Moore edited Transgender Children and Young People. And I wrote a chapter for that where I put down, and I felt like there were various factors, not necessarily linked, but there was the adult rights, social justice movement on the one hand. But I came to this through parenting culture. I was working with parents and with teachers. And so I was really, I'm an expert on the world of parenting advice. and I see that as having created a really fertile soil for this idea that children are born with this fully developed self and they know who they are, and our job is just to facilitate their self-expression, etc., etc. I think there was a fertile soil created by the parenting advice culture of the previous at least decade. But I'd also worked in, the sort of stereotyping of kids' culture and marketing, the real extreme stereotypes, in children's books, toys, clothes, shoes, everything. That development as well. So I think I saw it as a sort of conflation of coming together of lots of different factors that sort of, it's a sort of alchemy and came into this thing. But more and more, I've seen it as part of a wider identity politics movement, more of a political movement, or being part of a political movement. But I didn't at the start.
So last question,
you just
gotta go. We're at, we should wrap up. I guess like final thoughts on where it's headed, or where you want it to go, or where your energy is where your attention is. Like, Gretzky says, don't look at where the puck is. He always looks where the puck is going. Where do you think the puck is headed?
So I think that it's headed into really, really darker areas than we've seen previously. We're going into, and my focus at the moment is on schools and schools guidance from the government and schools resources, because it's already gone into the TQ plus. We have no idea what that means, and there seems to be no ceiling on that. But we know queer means gender and sexual identities that maybe is considered outside the normal. So we don't know what that means, do we? And we've gone a long way into bringing that into schools. And so I think that's, paedophilia, I think it's heading in really dark directions. But I think we're on it. Certainly in the UK, we're on it.
Yes, so here too.
Yeah.
This conference is the embodiment of that.
Yeah.
And again, for me, I can't overemphasize to me what I think the importance is of, it's not just us in the little gender world. This could have been just the people who've been doing this for years. Look at who was here, though. Michael Schellenberger, right? Crossing into it. Wilfred Riley. The fact that it's becoming more heterodox interest, I feel positive about it. Is it going to necessarily go the way I would want it to go? I don't know. But certainly there's now a bright light being shined more. And I mean, you mentioned schools. I mean, in the U.S., there's a ton of parent organization around what's going on in the schools. And it is major, and they are not giving up. I think there's just a case that just was brought. There's at least 2 cases in the U.S. about schools transitioning the children against the parents' knowledge. And that's a pretty big deal. So I feel pretty positive in general. Cautiously optimistic, let's put it that way.
I think we're winning. Definitely. Because once you start that process, it's not going to reverse. It's not going to go back the other way. It can only move forward.
Yeah.
So that all the gains we've made, it can only continue in that direction. So I'm really positive that we've turned a corner on it. Definitely, the house of cards is falling.
But there is a fierceness on the other side too, and that fierceness can't be underestimated.
My fear is that gay and lesbian kids will go along with it. It will be back to women must act like women, men must act like men. It's not it's a sort of the sort of conservative view of sex and gender. We could lose things as well as gaining.
Except, the kids might decide this is all really uncool.
That's
and I've heard that some of them are saying it's uncool now.
Well,
like, oh my God, the they, them. It's still very much there. But if the youth start going, not cool,
It's one of the things, actually, where I've always felt let them speak, because give them enough rope and they'll hang themselves. Because whenever they do speak, it's so great for our side because it piques so many more people.
Yeah, you don't have to editorialize or embellish.
Sometimes I feel slightly ambivalent about schools, because I know that kids now are saying are so fed up of hearing about gender.
Yeah.
And kids are realising that this isn't the cool sort of youth subculture that they'd been led to believe it was. It's being imposed on them in a very authoritarian way by their own teachers. So they're rebelling against it, and that will naturally happen. It happens with any youth movement. So I almost think, let it get to a real extreme in schools and the kids will sort it out. But on the other hand, you don't want to see the collateral damage with the vulnerable kids.
Which we're seeing.
Which is what we're seeing, yeah. So...
Thank you so much for your work and for your time. You guys are awesome.
And thank you.
Thank you, really, so much.
I can't believe how awesome this work's been.
Was this okay?